Does anyone else feel like this lockdown has been the hardest yet? It seems to be the general consensus around the nation as many comment on the difficulties of being stuck at home with the long nights and the cold weather. In the first lockdown, we had glorious weather. Do you remember? Many of us then didn't really complain that we had a number of weeks just to spend at home in the garden, soaking up the sun or going out for a stroll in the beautiful areas where we live. Now myself and Josh spent a little bit of time in the garden this week. Well, we haven't done much there other than sweep up the dead leaves and try and remove some of the slushy, muddy gunk that has left itself on our patio over the winter. Those jobs were horrible and dirty, and despite a huge amount of effort, there really isn't much of a difference to be seen at first glance. Now, if we're going to make our garden into one of those beautiful places where we can enjoy the weather and the fresh air as we approach the spring and summer months, then we might need some professional help. And so all of this got me thinking, those beautiful gardens and countryside that we often enjoy take a lot of hard work to keep them looking beautiful to human standards. We all love the forest, but not in our own gardens or parks, because unkempt land is just hazardous and just looks like an overgrown mess. This beautiful world that we get to enjoy has to be cared for. And that's not just the job of gardeners and groundkeepers. God asks us all to be caretakers of the land. Now, did you know that the early chapters of Genesis are actually two accounts of how the world was created? Now, I have to be honest and say that this little fact was only made known to me as I studied the Old Testament whilst training to be an officer at William Booth College. Genesis 1 to 2 verse 3 is one account, and then Genesis 2, 4 to 25 is the other. Now, both do tell the story of how God created the world. From the stars to the sea, from the trees to the flowers, the elephants to the humans. However, the order by which those things occur do change slightly. And now where some would use this idea that there's two stories to discredit the idea that God created the world, for me, it just acknowledges that although nobody was able to write an account of creation at the time, the two tales that have come down through history were surprisingly similar and therefore affirm each other. The fact is that God is our creator, and he existed long before we did, long before trees, and long before they made paper, and long before graphite, and long before they made pencils. However, we can remain in the knowledge that because God is who he says he is, he created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. And so if we look at our Bible reading for today, we will see that it speaks about livestock, insects, wild animals, fish, birds, seed-bearing plants and trees with fruit. These are all aspects of God's creation, which was made and was pleasing to God. And it's often easy to see why. As I've already mentioned, many of us take great delight in enjoying the natural beauty that is all around us, or maybe watching the latest David Attenborough documentary to see the wonders and the marvels of creation that are perhaps a little bit further than our own front doors. It's often said that the depth and intricacy of God's creation is most visible in the tiniest veins on a leaf found on the grandest of oak trees, or the incredible colours and composition of the smallest insect that has only just been discovered. However, the coronavirus has revealed something more to us than just the fragility of life. It has revealed to humanity the extent of the damage that we often cause to creation just for going about our daily lives. When looking back on that first lockdown, scientists were able to establish that lockdown actually had some positive impact on our climate. By the end of 2020, air pollution was drastically reduced all around the world, from less car, train and plane travel. Ocean life showed signs of recovery after fishing became more restricted, and a number of animals once endangered are now thriving. Our world is an incredible, beautiful place, but there seems to be plenty of evidence that humanity has failed to care for it well. However, that is what we have a responsibility to do. If we look back to our Bible reading for today, we will see that God commands humanity to rule over the birds, the fish, the creatures, the wild animals. That is in chapter 1, verse 26. And we are to eat the plants and the fruit in verse 29. Creation was made by God, but it was also made for humanity to enjoy, so that they could survive and so that they could care for it. And as beings created in God's image, that is our responsibility. Genesis 2:15 also reminds us of this, and the fact that our task is to be put to work to care for the land. Now, I dare say that might have been a little bit easier to manage when our sole task on earth was survival. I'm sure if we go back through history, there will be plenty of evidence of humanity simply working the land to take what they needed. However, somewhere along the line, humanity has become greedy, and we've begun to cause more harm than good by taking more than we need. Now, I appreciate at this moment in time, I probably sound like a climate activist, or like I'm channeling my inner Attenborough. But the truth is, as a Christian, I worship God through the beauty of his creation. And yet I also contribute to those things that cause significant damage to it. And so today I come not with a challenge to particularly change your lifestyle and go completely green, though I'm sure that the world would be a lot more cared for if we all did that. But I invite us to be aware of the wonderful gift that we've been given in the world around us and to care for it. And if we are to love God, then we need to love his creation. That includes yourself and your neighbour, as we've explored in recent weeks. But it also includes our home as well. Now, as I say all of this, I realise that the world has become a place that many Christians prefer to disassociate from. After all, passages such as Romans 8:39 imply that things in creation would separate us from God. Romans 12:2 tells us not to conform to the world, and 1 John 2:15 tells us not to love the world, for if we do, then the Father is not with us. So it can be confusing to read those scriptures, which then ask us to care for the world, but then at the same time remove ourselves from it. But there is a difference in what is meant by world. We have a responsibility to care for creation, and as children of God, we can worship God simply by going for a walk and taking in the beauty around us, breathing in the fresh air, caring for a pet, or feeding the birds. However, we should not become obsessed by the things that the world sees as important. Those things in the world don't refer to the plants or the animals or the birds, but those things that humanity have decided are desirable. And so those things that we love of the world are not the natural beauties at all, but the biggest houses, the fastest cars, the fullest bank account, the shiniest jewellery, and those things that we gather as humanity, which ultimately damage the world. And so today, I want to challenge you to put your things of the world into perspective against the beauty of the world. And I hope that in doing so, you will join me and creation in worshipping our amazing God, who has given us this incredible place to live and enjoy. And as you reflect on my challenge for today, the prayer for myself and for you is that maybe next time you need to sort through your waste for recycling, you might just smile and know that although it's annoying, it is helping humanity to care for this creation as God intends us to do. And such an action shows God that we love him and all that he has made. May God bless you today.